What's going on, people? Welcome to another Emotion Football live stream. My name is Alam, and today we got another playoff landscaping stream. This is a weekly thing we do on this channel. There's 10 people watching live. Shout out to everybody tapped in. Some of you guys might be new, and for those of you who aren't familiar, what we do here for playoff landscaping is it's like a weekly stock watch for every team. We go through the playoff landscape and we talk through every team's chances of making the playoffs, the likelihood of them being contenders, and we sort through how we feel about every single team. So before I get started, make sure you guys hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Very important stuff to do on YouTube. I see I got some familiar friends in here. We got Disco Flash, King, Leon, Genwell. Yeah, shout out to you guys. We're going to get things started. So I got the predictor up first. Damn. So this is from last week. Normally I clear everything out from the bottom, or like I clear everything out, put all the teams at the bottom, and we go from there. The thing I wanted to do this week, because honestly, I don't know how much change there's going to be from a week to week basis. You guys can help me if you guys feel any different, but I think the main change this week is I'm putting Miami from the gutter to in the hunt, and I'm putting the Jets in their spot. I think that's the big change. And I think the bulk of what we're going to be doing for this stream is talking about where teams could end up and what the factors would be for them to end up in different spots. So that's one change I wanted to make. Indy and Denver belong where they are. Houston, I feel even better about putting Houston just here to take up a spot. Hold on. Why does it look like the Texans has added possess to the logo game combined with the Chargers logo? Oh, true. It looks like the Houston the horn is getting struck by lightning. That's what it looks like. But yeah, that's the main change I wanted to make. I think we didn't learn a whole lot new, but if we're gonna kind of change the conversation a little bit and talk about where every team could go, we'll start at the top with Kansas City. And the only place Kansas City could go for me is to the potential threats, and that would only involve some type of major injury to like Mahomes, or if they had to, I don't know, Andy Reid had to stop coaching for some reason, like something crazy like that. Great question, King. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk about every team's like opportunities for mobility. Kansas City, I think, could only possibly go down one, and that's because of something crazy, right? Buffalo and Baltimore. For those two teams, I don't think they could possibly go down to just here to take up a spot, barring major injury. And if you think about what they need to go up a level, I think Buffalo would have to they'd have to have multiple like stellar games or stellar performances in big games. So we can look at their schedule here. That's actually why I have this window open. So if we go to Buffalo and we look at this stretch here, they got Kansas City, they got San Francisco, and Detroit. So those are three games. I want to see two of those three games look like just convincing wins. I think that's what Buffalo can do to prove to me that they're a real threat. The issue for Buffalo is that we've seen them in the playoffs before, and we know that this team is, very similar to some of the older teams. And the issue isn't necessarily that they're lacking in major ways. It's more just that they get to the big game and they lose by small margins. When they lost to Kansas City in Kansas City, obviously fine margins. They were 13 seconds away from winning. In Buffalo, the motherfucker hit the field goal, just missed the field goal at the end, right? The issue for Buffalo is that they're in a close game in a big moment and things just don't work. So for them, like, I want to see you not have to play a close game. I want to see you look really, really convincing in these big games. So again, San Francisco, Kansas City, Detroit, can you show me convincing performances? If you do, then Buffalo for me can climb up one tier to the potential threats. Baltimore, what's got to change? Do you think if Diggs played versus the Lions past week, do the Texans win it? Yeah, because that game was such a fine margins game that if you add a little bit to one side or the other, I feel comfortable saying that that team would win. Or Harrison Butker gets injured since that guy's pretty much like the fifth best player. Or maybe they lose some defensive players like Chris Jones or Trent McDuffie. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, and it's specifically these kind of players you're talking about. It's Chris Jones and McDuffie. It's the core pillars to their team. If they lose peripheral pieces, because like we've already seen them lose Pacheco and Omenahu and Rashi Rice and Hollywood Brown, like they've lost the pieces around their pillars, and they found a way to just persevere. So yeah, it's definitely for me about as long as they have their main guys. Yeah, Kansas City is definitely going to be a real threat. But I'm going to be so real with you, Genoa. Even if they lose them, even if they lose a Chris Jones, part of me would still feel like as long as I don't see that they're all of a sudden giving up 45 a game, I still feel some level of confidence. So I don't know. It's just tough for me to imagine Kansas City dropping down a tier. But yeah, to touch on Baltimore real quick. Baltimore, for them to go up, their defense has to play better. Their defense looks shit. They might have to fire the defensive coordinator. I don't know what they can do midseason, but the passing defense is really bad. The rush defense is okay, but that's just not a recipe for 2024. You got to be able to defend the pass in a passing sport, and that's what football is at this point. So the issue with Baltimore right now is that they kind of remind me of. Well, it's not that they remind me of some of the older Bills teams, but one of my issues with the way the Bills used to be is that they kind of rely on Josh Allen to be Superman all the time. Like that's a part of their winning formula is that Josh Allen has to be Superman. And the issue with having that kind of a team in football is because this isn't a best of seven kind of a sport. You got one game, and if you want to win a Super Bowl, you have to win 4 in a row come playoff time, maybe 3 in a row if you have a bye week. That's a big issue because all it takes is one slip up. And that's kind of what happened with the Bills, right? The Bills would have great games. They'd even have great playoff games. But then all of a sudden, they would just have a slip up. And the problem with that Baltimore has right now is that the way they're built, it feels like they need Lamar to be Superman to win. I think the addition of Derrick Henry, while it helps Lamar, it's not quite enough, I don't think. I still think most of the weight lies on Lamar's shoulders. If the defense was better, I think you would say, okay, you know what? Derrick Henry or Lamar could win you the game. I think at this point, Derrick Henry is not going to help you win a game where he's not going to be the main reason you win a game that you need 35 points in. That's not the case. If this team had a good defense, Derrick Henry could get you to 24 points more or less on his own, and you could win the game. But yeah, it looks like Baltimore is going to have to be a team that scores in the 30s consistently. And that's all about Lamar. That's all about Lamar. So they're going to need Lamar come playoff time because it doesn't look like they're going to be the 1 seed. They're going to need him to be Superman 4 weeks in a row. And that's an issue to me because that's just an unreasonable expectation to put on anybody, really. Free Likely. Oh, sad story about Isaiah Likely. I dropped so much fab on him in week 1 and I had to drop him recently. It was bad. They needed a better wide receiver one, in my opinion. Zay isn't matching up to what the league standard of wide receiver ones is. He's probably been the best wide receiver one that Lamar has had, but that just shows you how low the bar is, and that's kind of part of the problem. It would be crazy to see what Lamar would look like with some of these receiving cores. Imagine if he had Tyreek and Waddle, or AJ Brown and Devontae, or Jamar and T. Higgins, even DK and Jackson Smith and Jigba, like any of these guys. So that's the thing with Baltimore. We're gonna move to Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh, I don't think could possibly go down to in the hunt because they have too many wins and they have too many more opportunities for wins. To just take a quick look at their schedule. They're sitting at 7-2, and their schedule has 2 matchups against Cleveland, 2 matchups against Cincinnati. In those 4 games, I cannot wait. Lenore just got an extension. 92 for 5 years. Damn. Okay, hold on. That's under 20 a year. I feel like that's decent in the corner market. That's a decent contract. We can look at the end to see how it lines up with the rest of the contracts in the league. But yeah, out of Pittsburgh's 4 divisional games against Cincinnati and Cleveland, I can only see them losing 1. I can't see them losing 2. Um, Obviously, like what King's referring to here is that they literally have a stretch of Philadelphia, Baltimore, Kansas City. That's crazy. That's a crazy run of games over there. But when it comes to the other matchups, like I said, I only see them potentially dropping 1 of the games against Cincinnati and Cleveland. So you add those 3 wins to their 7, they're already at 10 wins. They scrap together another 1 win, and there you have it. You have your 11, and for that reason, yeah, they're not going to ever find themselves in the hunt. I do think they're in the playoffs. So when it comes to the fact that they're in the just here to take up a spot category, what I'm saying by that is that your chances of making the playoffs are high, but your chances of contending are low. What does Pittsburgh have to do to be a contender? I think they sweep the Browns, maybe Bengals away, and then yeah. So this is the thing. I'm assuming they split the series with Baltimore. I don't think that that's the kind of matchup and the kind of series that either team sweeps the other team. But yeah, like I said, I think they might drop a game against Cincinnati, and that's only on account of the fact that divisional games are tough. Divisional games at the end of the year, when there's a lot of tape out there, are definitely tough. And late season games in the AFC North are always tough. So like the idea that they're just gonna run through Cleveland and Cincinnati, like I do think they'll drop 1 game just for that reason, and it's probably going to be Cincinnati away. But yeah, I mean, there's a chance they'll sweep them. If I had to call it, I would call 3-1 in that stretch, 1-1 against Baltimore, and then Philly and Kansas City. I want to say they go 1-1 there as well, but we'll see. But yeah, this is the thing. I think they get their wins. I don't think that's a stress. That's an issue when it comes to them being contenders. What in my mind has them not being contenders? And honestly, it's mainly just quarterback play. And the thing is, it's not that Russell Wilson hasn't played good enough up to this point. It's just that he hasn't played the right opponents. If Russell Wilson, and we're going to see it because, again, he has that stretch of Philly, Baltimore, and Kansas City. If Russell Wilson shows up, and I'll say this, if he looks like he's holding his own in the quarterback matchups in those games, so against a Hurts and a Mahomes and a Lamar, then you might look at it and say, he has weapons at this point. He has Pickens. They're getting more out of Calvin Austin. They're going to get Roman Wilson. They just got Mike Williams. Don't put that on us. Yeah, no, the schedule makers got Chicago and Pittsburgh have to play all their divisional games all of a sudden. Yeah, no, you guys are definitely going to be in for it. But like I said, in those 3 matchups, if Russ can hold his own, then you look at it and you say, okay, they have a functional running game. They have an offensive line that has young players that should be getting better the more they play. They have a defense that's performing, that has more depth now, especially at the edge spot. So yeah, it's just like, as of right now, if Russell Wilson is like significantly at a lower level than a Mahomes and a Lamar, and then even a Hurts, maybe, then you look at them and say, okay, when it comes to, again, being in the playoffs and having to win, especially in the AFC, a bunch of games against Josh Allen and against Lamar and against Mahomes, if he's like considerably lower than them, then they're not going to go on a run in January. So that's the thing. For Pittsburgh to climb up a spot, we got to see it from Russell Wilson. And that's why they're here. Houston. Here's my thing about Houston, guys. Quietly, I think Houston could find themselves in the hunt. And the only thing that stops them from being in the hunt, in my opinion, is the fact that their divisional competitors are so shit. So let's look at Houston, right? 6-4 football team. 6-4 football team that will play Kansas City and Baltimore in week 16 and week 17. People, in my head, those are 2 L's. So in my head, they're 6-6. That's how I'm looking at them. But then when you look at the rest of their games, look at this goddamn division. They played Jacksonville twice. No, they played Jacksonville once. They played Tennessee twice, and then they play Dallas once. Right now, the Dallas matchup was supposed to be a tough matchup. It's an easy game now. So here's the thing: like, if they had a respectable division, and even the Colts that they swept, who honestly should have won a game, like Houston, I don't know. In terms of just who they are as a team, they just got 5 interceptions and lost. That's really, really, really bad. Their offensive line is trash. Their receiving core obviously is banged up. It's going to get healthier, but they're putting CJ Stroud in much different positions or much different situations than he was in last year, and he's obviously not producing the same. So Houston, I mean, the thing is, okay, like let's just say for argument's sake they lose these 2 games. I think I'd have a hard time saying that they would lose off a bye week at home. Yeah, it's tough. You know what? I don't think I just talked myself out of it like midstream. I think Houston cannot possibly go any lower than here to take up a spot. My hot take on Houston is I kind of don't see them doing anything to be seen as a potential threat. I think it's too far gone with the offensive line. I don't know what they can do to get better. The trade deadline is over. I don't think, oddly enough, I think they had more injuries last year. Like, nobody's walking through that door to help the situation out. Their receiving core at best is going to be what it was last year for parts, which is just Nico and Tank Dell. We saw again, they got 5 picks at home and they lost. That's ridiculous. So yeah, my thing with Houston is that they just haven't found a way to replicate their performances from last year. And there's just like the other issue for me is that they have so much that's similar to last year. The main differences are Joe Mixon, which is a big upgrade in the running back room. And then defensively, they've upgraded some spots. So I think they went from one of their edge rushers that they let go in free agency and they signed Daniil Hunter, which again, it upgrades the spot, but it doesn't like fundamentally change who you are. So the issue is that when you're the same team in the NFL, you get found out. When you put like weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of tape out there and nothing really changes, eventually people figure things out. So yeah, I think it's a little too far gone with Houston. I think Houston's going to find themselves in this tier for a good little bit now. And Stroud not being, yeah, and that's the thing. The O-line is a big contributing factor. And I'm actually going to look it up right now. What does their O-line look like from an injury standpoint? Houston. Like, is there anybody they're getting back? Yeah, no, there's no Kenyon Green is on IR, but it doesn't say that he's supposed to be back. So yeah, I swapped Nico and bench Sutton last minute. Ooh, benching Sutton is tough. He hooped. Okay, and then the Chargers, they're here just to take up a spot. Okay, they're never going to be in the hunt, I don't think, and that's because of their schedule, if I remember right. Okay, so 6-3, and down the stretch they have games against last 2 weeks, New England and Vegas. So in my head, they already have 8 wins. Then they need to just scrap together 3 more wins out of Cincinnati, Atlanta, Tampa, and Denver. And that's assuming that they don't upset one of Baltimore or Kansas City. And I do think that they're upset candidates. So I think the Chargers are squarely in the playoffs, especially considering that I don't think that there's a ton of other options in the wild card race. As you can see, they're 2.5 games ahead of Cincinnati and Indy for the wild card spot. So I don't think the Chargers can drop down. And in terms of jumping up, I don't know what the Chargers can do for me to think they're threats this year. And the main issue is I just don't think they're gonna have a receiving core that's required to be considered a big threat. I think Jen Wills kind of helped me understand that they need pieces defensively as well. So unfortunately for them, it's just too early in their reload, right? They're obviously, when they hired Harbaugh, they weren't in a bad enough spot as a 53-man roster to require an outright rebuild, but they definitely required a reload, and they're just too early in that cycle. The thing is, we always nearly have KC's number, but can't get it done even the time we are good. No, I've noticed that. And the thing is, like, especially with Harbaugh, like, you guys are always going to be in close games with Kansas City, I feel. So yeah, you guys have the quarterback. Like I said, I just don't think you guys have the wide receivers. So I don't think there's anything the Chargers can do to climb up a spot here, which sucks, but it is what it is. Like, we'll have to keep an eye on them for next year. So now we're gonna go to the in the hunt tier. Cincinnati. So Cincinnati, they're never gonna be seen as just here to take up a spot for me, because I don't think they'll ever achieve the security, right? They're 4-6, and as a 4-6 team, they play Pittsburgh twice. So absolute best case scenario, you get one win there. So that's at least one loss. And so that already puts them at around 7 losses. If they completely run the table, that gets them to 10 wins. But that assumes completely running the table. So, like, maybe they could have playoff security in week 18. But when your path to 10 wins involves running the table, you're never going to have enough security to be in the just here to take up a spot category. In terms of what could happen for to Cincinnati to drop down, honestly, the teams around them would have to start playing really well and have to start going on winning streaks, because to look at the flip side of the coin, in terms of winnable games here, I think their games against Dallas, Tennessee, and Cleveland. I think that's 3 games that it's 3 in a row, oddly enough. Those are 3 games that I would say are pretty favorable for them, and they could get 3 wins in a row. Unfortunately for them, there's 2 games before that. So I guess for Cincinnati, if they drop these next 2 games against the Chargers and the Steelers, that puts them at 4-8. Yeah, I might have to put them at that point in the lowest tier, because that would mean they have to win out to go 9-8. And even at 9-8, you only have a chance. And again, winning out 5 games in a row as a team that's 4-8 is obviously very, very difficult. So yeah, for Cincinnati, for them to drop to in the hunt, honestly, I think 1 loss might do it. I think 1 loss might do it here. You know what? That's harsh. I think it would have to be 2. So 2 losses up here, Chargers and Steelers. That ends the Bengals season for me. Indy. So Indy is an interesting one. They're 4-6. If you look at their schedule, right? The game against Detroit, that's a pretty easy loss to call. But if you look at every other matchup here, Jets, Patriots, Broncos, Titans, Giants, Jaguars, especially this run here of Titans, Giants, and Jaguars to end the season, they have a very good chance of finishing 10-7. They have a very good chance. So I don't think I'll be able to put them in the lowest tier of you better get ready to learn scouting combine, buddy, because they just have too many winnable games. In terms of what would have to happen to get them there, they'd probably have to drop one of the easy games. Maybe 2. I think 2 would be fair to say. So if they drop 2 of these games against the Jets, Colts, Jets, Patriots, Broncos, Titans, Giants, Jaguars, as soon as the second game gets dropped there, that's where you probably call their season. But in terms of what they could do to get up to the here to take up a spot tier where your playoff chances are pretty secure, again, unfortunately, nothing, because they just have too many losses. I mean, you know what? For them to have enough wins, they'd probably have to beat Detroit. So if they want to go to the higher tier, they got to beat Detroit. That's the only way to do it. Otherwise, you're getting your 7th loss there. Like I said, I don't think you could do anything to achieve security, especially because if you look at the teams in the top three tiers, we've identified 6 teams. So everybody in the hunt is competing for 1 spot. That's actually the biggest reason that there will probably never be in the here to take up a spot tier. Because quite simply, there's just too many teams competing. For some divisional weapon pride, put the Broncos up there, they'll make the playoffs. Okay, interesting. Just as we pivot to Denver, so like the key, I guess, the key team here that's different than the rest of them. One of these things is not like the other. With Cincinnati and Indy, let me just uncheck this. With Cincinnati and Indy, you're talking about 4-win teams. With Miami, you're talking about a 3-win team. With Denver, we're talking about a 5-win team. So why are they here? Um, I'll have to talk this one out. So they're sitting at 5-5. If you look at the rest of their games, they play Vegas, Cleveland, Indy, Chargers, Bengals, Chiefs. So the thing about the game against the Chiefs in Week 18 is that it's against the Chiefs. The Chiefs might be resting players. The Chiefs might be going for 17-0. We don't know. It's kind of a wild card. But if you think about the fact that they almost won on the road, you think about the fact that that's a rivalry. It's week 18. There's a chance they might be playing against backups. That's not an automatic loss by any means. You have to look at that last matchup as a possible win. A game against Cincinnati, definitely winnable. Game against the Chargers, all divisional games amongst comparable teams are always like toss-ups to me. Unless I know the divisional rivalry really well, Jen will can maybe shed some light on specifically how the Broncos and Chargers match up. But obviously that's winnable. They play the Colts, both teams off of a bye. Obviously that's winnable. Browns, they should be beating Vegas. You know what, Jen will, I got you. We're gonna put the Broncos up in here to take up a spot. I think the Chargers game might be a trap game for us traveling to Mile High. There you go. So you know what? You talked me into it successfully. We're putting the Broncos in here just to take up a spot because they already have 2 games up on everybody else, on the Bengals, the Colts, and the Dolphins. And they have, arguably, you could say, we just looked at some schedules. They might have an easier schedule. Honestly, no, I lied. I think Miami has an easier schedule, but Miami is so far back. So Denver has a leg up on the other teams in terms of wins, and they have some winnable games in their schedule. So we're gonna put Denver a 1 tier up in the here just to take up a spot tier. And the last team to look at is Miami. So the thing I wanted to point out about Miami is that they're 3-6, yes, but look at this. They play the Raiders and the Patriots at home next 2 games. If they play like they did against the Rams, that's 2 wins and they go to 5-6. Now, once they're 5-6, they go to play Green Bay in Green Bay on Thanksgiving. That's a really tough game for them, in my opinion, because it's on the road in frigid Green Bay at a time of the year where it's going to start to get cold. Dolphins outdoors. Yeah, I don't know. So let's say that puts them at 5-7. Now they have to run the table to get to 10-6. Oh, sorry, 10-7. There's 2 games against the Jets, both definitely winnable. Then the games against the Texans, Niners, and Browns. The game against the Browns is winnable. Obviously, it's just the Texans, Niners, and Packers games. These 3 games, that's really, really tough. Do you think Seattle can win their division? We're gonna get to that topic specifically a little bit later. I don't think so, Anthony. But I'll explore that in greater depth a little later in the stream. Very good question though. Shout out to Anthony's asphalt. Anybody who needs any asphalt related stuff, Anthony does the best asphalt maintenance. You're hearing it here first. Um, so yeah, Miami. The thing is because they have these winnable games here, and they could get hot. Like if they mess around and if they mess around and beat Green Bay somehow, and they get rolling in a 4-game win streak into Houston. And again, you guys know what I think about Houston. I think Houston could lose against anybody. So, Niners injuries, you never know. Like there's a possibility that they could go on a run here. Oddly enough, I think this game against Cleveland is a tough one because Cleveland has extra rest. They're off a mini bye. This is Cleveland in the winter. And this is a point where like random shit happens. So quietly, I think there's a chance Miami could get on a run and still lose to Cleveland. So this is the issue. Like I think things will fall apart for Miami. That's why they're in the hunt. They're very close to having their season buried. But I had them in the Better Learn Scouting Combine Buddy tier last week. I brought them back to life because they beat the Rams. I just did not expect them to beat the Rams at all. So they're very close to being buried again. Just one more bad loss, but I had to give them life. When it comes to the rest of the teams in the lowest tier here, what they can do to revive their seasons, none of them can revive it except the Jets. But the Jets would no, you know what? The Jets can't do it either. Yeah, I think all these teams are just cooked. Jets are at 3-7. They'd have to win out to get to 10-7. That's not possible. Could they get to 9-8 and hope that 9-8 gets you the last spot? Maybe, but like, look at the stretch here. Can they win these games and only lose one? So they play the Bills. They play 2 games against the Dolphins, 2 divisional matchups. Rams aren't easy. Seahawks aren't necessarily easy. Colts, yeah, no, they can't do it. They're done. The Jets are cooked. Jets keep messing up my parlays. Yeah, bro. I mean, on one hand, you got to look inwards and ask yourself, like, why am I putting parlays on the New York Football Jets? But at the same time, you know what? Yeah, see, this is my thing. It's the Jets. It's the Jets, man. It's a hopeless franchise. King is upset, man. Who bets on the Jets? Hey, bro, I had to do a little bit early. I'm doing another stream at 8. It's all good though. We AFC, honestly, more of the same shit. I just swapped Miami and the Jets. Good try bigging up the Jets, but it's the Jets. Damn. I tried to be thorough. Hey, big up to you. We talked some good stuff about Baltimore. We said good things about Baltimore. NFC. Again, this week, I don't think a whole lot changed. I'm trying to think about what I feel differently about. Oh, okay. Hold on. I think Atlanta, I feel a little bit differently about. I think the 2 teams I want to talk about are Atlanta, Seattle, maybe San Fran, but that's about it. Okay. Teams from the bottom. Do I think anybody here can revive their years? No, I think they're all dead and gone. The Saints got a little bit of like new coach bounce this week. But Chris Olave is out for the year. Nothing they can do. Cowboys season just literally just like went up in flames. We're about to see a whole lot of Trey Lance. That's gonna go poorly for the win column. So now we get to the in the hunt tier. NFC West is very tricky. I think Seattle. Here's my issue with Seattle. So Seattle is, where are they? They're 4-5, and I think they're about to. They have a bye week this week. I think here's my issue. I think they're losing to the Niners because they always lose to the Niners, right? So let's say that loss puts them at 4-6. Then their next 3 games are Cardinals, Jets, Cardinals. Now, forget what happens against the Jets for a second. Under no circumstances are they sweeping the Cardinals. At best case scenario, that's 1-1. So we already got the Niners loss, putting them at 4-6. The split against the Cardinals puts them at 5-7. From that point onwards, you need to run the table to get to 10-7, right? So they're running the table in this context involves beating the Jets, the Packers, the Vikings, the Bears, and then a divisional game against the Rams. That to me is impossible. And I think the main issue there is specifically the Packers and the Vikings back to back. Now, they're both home games, but I think those are 2 tough opponents back to back. Could you beat one of them? Sure. Could you beat both of them? I don't think so. So that's my big issue. We haven't beat the Niners since Russ was here. This is real. This is real. Thank you, Anthony, for I wasn't thinking about it even that way. But yeah, I just remember like every time these 2 teams play, I feel like I watch Deebo Samuel score a touchdown, right? So that's an issue. That's the thing. So again, given the first little stretch here of divisional games, their path to 10-7 is very difficult. Their path to 9-8 isn't even the best, but I think they could crack 9-8. Now, if you look at the NFC wildcard race, 9-8, 0 chance of that getting you a wildcard spot. You got to win the division or bust. And unfortunately, I think there's going to be at least 2 teams with a better record than 9-8 in this division. So my problem is like Seattle, they belong in this tier in the hunt mathematically, but honestly, I don't see it happening for them. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs this year, and the main reason for me is because I think that they're just too early in their pivot to Mike McDaniel. I think the linebacker spot is kind of a great example of I guess just where they're at as a team, because they signed Jerome Baker to a contract, right? So management decided this is a guy we like, and we are going to pay him money to play football. And Mike McDonald gets his hands on the player and realizes this guy doesn't fit my scheme at all. What happens? He gets traded midseason for another linebacker. And the hope there is that you got somebody that's a better scheme fit. Now, when you look at, I'm trying to see, I think I saw somebody got waived. Then they just released another linebacker, Terrell Dodson. So they're out here. Mike McDonald is out here. I basically realizing he doesn't have the personnel that he wants to play defense. I think Mike McDonald is a great coach, and I think specifically he's a great defensive tactician, but he simply just doesn't have the personnel. Offensively, I think you're seeing that JSN is having a bit of a breakout year, but I think Geno Smith kind of establishes a ceiling for your offense, and it's not the highest ceiling. So I just think that Seattle next year, with another offseason to get the right players defensively, probably will look better. And then if they can figure out this quarterback situation, definitely could be better. But this year, again, I have to put them in the hunt mathematically, but I really don't think they're a playoff team this year. Unfortunately. That being said, though, down the stretch in these games against Green Bay, Minnesota, they play the Rams. Obviously, they play the Cardinals. They're playing teams that are going to be in the playoff hunt, and I do expect them to have an upset at some point. I'm looking for them to beat one of Green Bay and Minnesota, but unfortunately, they just can't beat both. And then we go to the rest of the teams in this division. Tampa is in the hunt, or the rest of the teams in this category. Tampa is in the hunt, guys, but they're in the hunt because of their record. So again, at 4-6, I could not sit here and tell you that you have a high likelihood of making the playoffs. But look at this schedule, people. They go play the Giants. Hold on. The Giants are a 2-8 football team. They then play the Panthers, who are, I got to zoom out to help do this a bit more efficiently. The Panthers are a 3-7 football team. They then play the Raiders, who are a 2-7 football team. They then play the Chargers. That's a good matchup. But they then play the Cowboys, that are a 3-6 football team, followed by the Panthers, who are 3-7, and then the Saints. Literally, the Buccaneers at this point onwards, 6 of their last 7 games are against teams that presently have 2 or 3 wins. Tampa is about to run this. Literally, the only losable game is the Chargers. I think they're about to run the table here, especially as they get healthier. And they're going to finish with either 10 and 11 wins. So the same way how Seattle is in this tier, but I really feel like they belong lower. I just can't because of numbers right now. The Bucks, I actually feel like, man, you're going to get 10 to 11 wins. So it just, if things break right for you with Atlanta's games, you probably should be here to take up a spot. Like, again, I don't think they're actual contenders, but they're a good team. They literally have beat the Eagles and the Lions, who at this point I think are the class of the NFC. So Tampa's about to go on a run. The inverse of that, though, is like when you talk about Tampa, facts. What the fuck are these teams? What the fuck are these teams? The other side of it, though, is that you got to look at Atlanta. Atlanta, who sits at 6-4, 2 games above Tampa with the tiebreaker. So they're really 3 games above Tampa. But mind you, they do not have nearly the same schedule. They play Denver. Now, tricky thing about this matchup, both teams are depressed, right? Like, the Broncos have lost 2 games in a row. They've lost to Baltimore and Kansas City, but obviously the loss against Kansas City is a horrible loss, right? 2 losses in a row. You don't deserve to be on a 2-game losing streak. You're looking at this game like we have to get our shit together. And then Atlanta just lost to the Saints of all teams. So they're they're in the same spot. Like we have to get our shit together. Unfortunately, I'm going with the home team. I think the home team coming off a 2-game losing streak where they played well against the Chiefs, that's the team I'm picking to win this game. So if you keep that in mind, they got a tough matchup against Denver, a bye week, tough matchup against the Chargers, tough matchup against the Vikings. Look, Raiders, Giants, a little 2-game stretch here, very winnable, but then a tough matchup against Washington before ultimately playing the Panthers. So while they're basically 3 games ahead of Tampa, they also have, they have 4. They actually, no, it works out perfectly. Both teams play the Chargers, and then the Falcons have 3 difficult teams matchups to have. So the Falcons can definitely give this division back to the Bucs. It's 100% possible. They have to have an upset win, or what I would consider an upset win, against Denver, the Chargers, the Vikings, or the Commanders. So that's what I have it as, people. Atlanta, they have to stay in this tier of here to take up a spot because of how well entrenched they are at the top of their division. But it'll just take a consistent amount of L's in those tough matchups to drop them into the hunt, because Tampa Bay is on their ass, people. So yeah, rest of the teams in this tier. Cardinals and Rams. Okay, you know what? No, we can talk about the Rams, because I think the Rams spiritually should be a tier lower. Again, just at 4 and 5. In that division, I can't quite drop them. The Rams and the Seahawks are kind of in similar spots to me. Although they're different teams, kind of in a similar spot. So the Rams are at 4 and 5. Game against New England here, that should be a win. That should put you at 5 and 5. But then after that, I think they lose this game against Philadelphia, where Philadelphia is coming off a mini bye because they played the Thursday the week before. So if you look at the Rams as a 5 and 6 team, they play the Saints. That's winnable, 6 and 6. And then here's a tough stretch of Buffalo and San Francisco. Now, unfortunately, they already beat I think they beat the Niners already. Yeah, they beat the Niners. I don't think they sweep the Niners. I don't think they beat Buffalo. So that 2 losses at that point would drop them to 6 and 8. And once you're 6 and 8, you have to run the table to even get to 9 and 8. And I mentioned the same thing about Seattle. I don't think 9 and 8 is guaranteed to not get you a wild card spot, and I don't think 9 and 8 gets you that division. So, yeah, unfortunately for them, I also think that, again, it's just going to take some time, but the losses will come, and eventually this team will drop off. But Rams and Seahawks, I think the odds are stacked against them. I think the real competitors for this division are the Cardinals and the Niners. So those are the teams that I think actually are like really in the hunt. I think the other teams, it's just, again, mathematically, they have similar records and they have opportunities to play those teams, so they have to be in the hunt. But Seahawks and Rams, I expect those teams to drop off. What team have I not addressed? Oh, the Cardinals. So the Cardinals, we'll look at their schedule really quickly. The Cardinals, they obviously got a bye week now. They got the 2 matchups against Seattle with a matchup against the Vikings before that. That's tough. My issue with the Cardinals schedule here is like, okay, let's look at these 2 games here against the Patriots and the Panthers. I think those are 2 wins here, right? I think the schedule around that is very difficult. They closed the year out playing the Rams and the Niners, 2 teams that they've already beat. And this is my issue. I don't know if they're going to sweep the Rams and sweep the Niners. I mean, I guess maybe they could sweep the Rams, maybe. But I kind of get the feeling they're going to drop those last 2 games against division rivals that are not going to want to get swept. Obviously the Rams, that's the winnable one, but I got them losing against the Niners for sure. And then the matchups before that, oddly enough, I mean, I think they can play, like, they're better than Seattle in my opinion, or at least they're playing better than Seattle. And then Minnesota is like not a it's not a landslide when they play that team either. But I do think that that's a tough stretch there because you got 2 divisional games, same opponent, and in the middle you have to go to Minnesota to play Brian Flores' defense at home. I do think that Flores' defense has, I think their splits, if you look at them home versus away, the defense plays a lot better at home. So that's a tough matchup. Like I think they get 2 soft wins in the middle with the Patriots and the Panthers, but I don't think they have a ton of easy wins beyond that. Like 1 guaranteed win against Seattle, sure they don't get swept. So you could say there's 3 automatic wins, but then beyond that, I think the wins are pretty tough. So if you look at 3 automatic wins being added to their wait, does that you know what? That see, so I mean when I'm talking about 9-8 not getting you the division, 3 wins gets them to 9 wins already. And if they scrap together 1 or 2 more, that'll make it tough for the Niners. So to kind of look at the Niners schedule to see where they fare in the competition, they got the matchup against the Seahawks where they always win. They have back-to-back road games against Green Bay and Buffalo. That's not a simple stretch there. But then they come back and they play the Bears, which I think will be a win. I already said that I think they'll beat the Rams. And the Dolphins, which is definitely winnable. But then the Lions is tough. Cardinals at the end. Hold on. If I had to call this right now, what does this put them at? Damn, do I have the Niners getting to 11 wins? What do you guys think? What would you guys change? Would you guys change much to what I did here? Because I got them splitting the Green Bay Buffalo stretch. I got them beating the Seahawks, the Bears, and the Rams for sure. And then I got them splitting. I have them beating the Cardinals as well. So then I have them splitting Detroit and Miami. That gets them to 11 wins. So then Arizona's probably going to get 11 wins as well. You know what? Yeah, it's honestly 1 more loss and Rams and Seahawks are getting dropped down to the lower tier. I'll say that much for sure. Yeah, the Cardinals definitely have the easier schedule. That much for sure. And then who else have I not addressed? I guess the only teams I haven't addressed: Detroit, Philly, Washington, Minnesota, Green Bay. I think the issue here is that I actually don't feel anything different about any of these teams. I'm pretty sure Green Bay was on a bye week. Minnesota kind of had a game where they're very much what I thought they were. Defense played well. Quarterback played suspect. Washington, again, I went on a long rant about Washington last week, and I think you saw a lot of what I was talking about. I think Pittsburgh did a great job against their offense, all things considered. And I think their corners struggled with Pickens and Mike Williams down the field. So my concerns about Washington kind of slowly getting found out as the year goes on. I think we started to see signs of that. We'll see if it continues against Philadelphia. But even if they have a good game against Philadelphia, I do expect that to happen over the course of the year. I think it's just unfortunately Washington's schedule is so easy. So they're sitting here at 7-3, right? 7-3, and they have Dallas, Tennessee, New Orleans, and Dallas. So that's 11 wins already right there. So 11 wins. Maybe the Saints is a trap game, right? Because it's before Philadelphia and it's in like a hostile. Well, the Saints isn't even going to be a hostile environment because they're ass. So yeah, you know what? That's 11 wins already. And the matchups where they have to find their 12th win, it's Philly twice and Atlanta. Actually, you know what? I mean, I think they're going to split the series against Philly. So then that's 12 wins. It's just whether they get to 13 wins or not is whether they beat Atlanta in the Kirk Cousins revenge game. So Washington, you're talking 12 to 13 wins. Unfortunately, then again, like for the reasons that I mentioned before, I don't see them being contenders in a quarterback's rookie year and a coach's rookie year and an OC's like first year. That's just not how it works. Green Bay against again, they had a bye week. Philly literally basically had a bye week against a Dallas team without a quarterback, and Detroit. Um, I guess Detroit. The only thing worth talking about is that did they take a step back, so to speak? And I think the fact that they could win a game where they threw 5 picks is damn impressive. You're not gonna win if you only win football games one way over the course of a year. That's a bad sign. I think having this feather in their cap of a very difficult win is a positive thing. Are you tempting faith? What if the Commanders do it? What if they do what? Nah, bro. I mean, oh, Jen Will, you weren't here last week. I had a big thing about how I think the Commanders have like 1,000% chance of making the playoffs. I just do not. They're not making a championship run this early into. It's just not happening. And what normally my guy Peter is in on the panel with me to do these streams. He made a great point of, bro, unless you have the Commanders winning the NFC East, you're then saying that Jaden Daniels is going to head on the road as a 5 seed and win a bunch of road playoff games against your Detroits and your Philadelphias. It's not going to happen. Again, your contention case for Washington has to start with them winning the division, and that is not guaranteed by any means. So yeah, I mean, as of right now, man, Washington is just here to take up a spot, buddy. Um, but yeah, man, Detroit, I think for them, what would actually here's the thing. In terms of what could actually happen to bring them down from real threats to potential threats, their defense has to start getting exposed. Because I saw from their offense that they could sit here and throw 5 picks and completely just honestly shoot themselves in the foot. I even shoot themselves in the foot, empty the clip on their own foot, and bounce back and just start hooping. Like they connected on plays down the field. Jameson Williams still had a few big plays. They ran the ball. They decided at some point, like, maybe we need to give Goff a break. Handed it off to the running backs. Like offensively, they showed a lot of resilience and just continuing to play and eventually leading a drive at the end of the game to win the game. I think their offense is going to be fine, all things considered. I think the issue for them that could actually begin to materialize is that defensively, their personnel is not that impressive. Like their corners are fine. Like they're good. Their safeties are awesome. Their safeties are sick. Their linebackers are awesome. Their defensive line is solid. Like their defensive line and their corners are solid. They're almost built in the inverse of what how a lot of teams are trying to build defenses. A lot of the teams, they want to build from the defensive line, and then they go to the corners, and the linebackers and safeties are almost considered like supplementary pieces. But they actually they stacked those positions and then they figured it out for the other pieces. But I do think that there are offenses that can expose their secondary and expose their defensive line. Yeah, this is the thing, man. It's about when no Aiden Hutchinson takes the toll. But my issue with Detroit and why I don't think that's going to happen is, again, let's look at this goddamn schedule. They are a 9-1 football team whose next 3 games are Jacksonville, Indy, and Chicago. So really, they're a 12-1 football team, all things considered. And then once they're 12-1, actually at that point, they have a nice little I think like a respectable stretch run. They got the Packers on Thanksgiving. Packers, actually, hold on. It's not even the Thanksgiving. It's after Thanksgiving. So Bears Lions is Thanksgiving. Then they play the Thursday afterwards. But Packers, obviously, like they beat. I think they beat the shit out of the Packers in Green Bay. But we saw the Packers beat them last year. So like that game could go either way. Divisional game, again, a divisional opponent that you just beat up on. But they know they can beat you. So that's a tough game. Buffalo, that's a tough game. Chicago, cakewalk. But Niners, a team that obviously they're going back to San Francisco where they lost the NFC Championship game. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, the way the Lions did the Cowboys, it shows you how motivated they are to get revenge. And for that reason alone, I do think they're going to beat the Niners. But yeah, and then the Vikings at the end, again, a divisional opponent. For these last 5 games, they could slip up. But again, they're going to approach that part of their schedule at 12-1, most likely. So yeah, that's what it is, people. We're going to close out with the Eagles. General says the Eagles are was that L Eagles, or I don't know. But he says they're frauds. So here's the thing. If you said this after week 4, I would actually, as an Eagles fan, sit here and agree with you. The thing is, though, bro, we keep slowly, just continually showing signs of improvement. Cooper DeJean has actually changed our defense, and that is not a joke. But having a slot corner that is, one, more than a slot corner, and two, somebody who can actually allow you to play coverages where you rely on your corners, you lean on them a little bit, it's helped the whole defense fit together a lot better. Before, it kind of didn't matter what we did with our front seven because Avonte Maddox was getting shredded. You guys do have a schedule in y'all, right? Hold on, what do you mean? Oh yeah. So I mean, I'll show you guys the Eagles schedule quickly. But yeah, no. So this is the thing. Our defense is slowly getting better, and this is the thing. Like, we're a very young team. People don't actually know this about the Eagles. Defensively, especially, we're a very young team. If this team keeps getting better, I think by the end of the year, they'll probably be a good team. Offensively, the strides are in the fact that with Steichen and Brian Johnson Sirianni plus either Steichen or Brian Johnson, we were a very dogmatic offense. Like, the tendencies were strong. We ran inside zone absurdly more than the rest of the league. We were in shotgun at a very high level. We ran certain wide receiver route combinations at an absurdly high level. Like, we had major tendencies. The thing about Kellen Moore is he's come in and he's broken a lot of the tendencies. And it's taken time for the personnel to adjust to it. But again, the offense is starting to get more comfortable every week. So this is the thing with the Eagles. I still think they have some bullshit in them, but it's starting to get a little bit better every week. So give us a little bit of time here. By December, we might be really good, but maybe not. So we'll see. In terms of the schedule, I got them splitting against Washington. I got them beating the Rams. I got them losing to Baltimore. I got them beating the Panthers, the Cowboys, and the Giants. And then I do have them beating Pittsburgh, but that game could go either way. So this thing here puts them at 13-4. So yeah, we need, what's it called? We need Washington to definitely lose that game against Atlanta. That's what I realized. But yeah, shout out to everybody in here. I got a cut here. I'm actually headed to my NBA channel now to do a watch along for the Raptors against the Bucks, plus the Duke against Kentucky. So I'm doing a double watch along of 2 separate games, people. The first one I've ever done. I'm going to drop the link in the chat here of anybody that wants to keep hanging out with me in particular. But I just dropped the link in the chat, people. That links you to the watch along at Toronto Hoop Talk, which is my basketball channel. I'm wrapping up here, people. Shout out to everybody that tapped in. Make sure you guys hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back on Thursday for Eagles against Commanders, a huge game. Hope to see you guys there. I'm out.